really enjoy our session today. So this is how we'll spend the next hour. I'll introduce myself, and then I want Cullen to introduce himself. He is our representative from iClicker. I will jump in and focus in on why. Why do we want to learn about iClicker? And then I'm going to turn it over to Cullen, and he's going to show us how to use iClicker. So we're going to try to schedule some time at the end for Q&A. If you have a question, you can definitely drop it in the chat. Throughout our session. We will be monitoring it, but we will wait until designated breaks to answer those questions, just so the flow of the workshop keeps going, and we can make sure that Colin gets all the necessary information in for you. So introductions. I am Tama Abear, and I am the Educational Technology Trainer for DSI Clear. I am an alumni of North Texas. I'm excited to be back on campus and this exciting role to help you learn more about some tools to use with your students. And I'll let Cullen introduce himself.
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Cullen Williams. I'm the client relationship specialist with iClicker. So here for, onboarding, any kind of training needs that you may need, as well as if you run into kind of any issues throughout the semester, from the instructor side of things, I am happy to help with those. So I believe my contact info may have been in the invitation, but if not, I'll have it on my first slide here, but it's just cullen.williams@macmillan.com.
Big. Thank you, Cullen.
Mhm.
Okay, so before I jump into the why are we here this afternoon learning more about iClicker, I am curious to see how you feel about the upcoming semester. We've got just a few days left, and we are excited to welcome our students. And this is actually part of iClicker. This is known as an event, and it's a great tool to use for things like this, workshops. Colin's going to really show you the platform to use with your students. This is more of something that you would want to use maybe with a workshop with your faculty, or if you are a different place than your courses, you're outside your class. But I'm going to start the poll. And you will see on the screen that we've got a QR code, so you can use your phone, or you can type in the website and the code ETUO. And I think Allison's going to drop the link in the chat for us if you'd like to click on that. But tell me how you're feeling about the semester. Are we excited? Are we overjoyed? Are we scared? Are we frustrated? Are we what are the other little emojis here? We have the upside down one that and then we have one that looks pretty scared. Guess we can do some of those. So you can see as you're marking your responses, this is one of the target questions, and the purple dots are your responses. And oh goodness, I see some people that aren't quite sure about the upcoming semester, which I get, especially the week before classes start. But this is a great way just to get some fun feedback, and to do a quick poll. And I'll leave it open for a couple of more minutes, and then we'll see the overall results. Right now is the live view, so you're seeing the results as they come in. So. Only one upside down, but you notice the upside down is smiling, so I think that is a good sign. If you're just joining us, if you want to scan that QR code or type in that website, I'm demoing one of the types of questions that you can use with this platform. I just want to know how you feel about the upcoming semester. Lots of different responses here. Welcome if you're just joining us. Welcome. I appreciate you guys being here again. I know your time is very valuable, especially right before classes start. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to end this particular poll just so we can see There we go. What it looks like. Well, 20 responses. I was trying to get a little bit bigger screen here, but I think we have a variety of responses. I agree maybe with the response being a little bit leery going into the semester. I know it's always an anxious time to make sure you've got everything ready to go and you don't know what to expect. It's a whole new group each semester, which can be fun and stressful as well. So no matter how you feel about this semester, Colin and I are going to make sure by the end of this hour that you are dancing and you are excited about going into the semester and your students are excited. They're going to be really looking forward to spending time with you this semester. But I wanted to briefly talk about why to use iClicker, why to learn more about it. I want to talk about active learning just briefly. Broadly speaking, active learning is defined as doing or thinking about doing. And an active learning activity provides opportunities for students to reflect, evaluate, analyze, synthesize, communicate, basically to be active in the lecture and active into the course. There's lots of research out there. This isn't a brand new concept, but there's constantly new activities, especially with technology being introduced. But a lot of the research will show very positive results from an active learning environment. Students they're scoring higher on assessments and overall being more engaged. So that ties into our iClickers. iClicker offers a fun, very interactive way to keep students engaged and involved in the learning process. So I wanted to demo another type of question. The first type of question we did was a target question. The next one I want to do is a multiple choice. And I'm going to minimize that. How many years of experience do you have in teaching? With our group, let's see, we've got a great group, almost about 34 of us. How many years of experience do you have in teaching? The QR code is at the bottom of the screen. If you did not exit out of the window, then you should be right there and the new question should pop up. And thank you, Allison. The link is in the chat again. So if you will let me know, are you brand new? Are you in the kind of the middle of your career towards the end? How many years do you have in to teaching? I was excited we did the new faculty orientation. Some of you may be here from that last week and enjoyed meeting some new faculty members that have just come to us. So you may be new to UNT, you may be new to teaching and UNT. So welcome. Wow. Okay, so these are the responses that we have so far. It is still open if you have not answered this question. So it looks like a majority of our participants are kind of just getting started. And I love that. This is a tool that's been around for a while. I think you'll enjoy using it in your course. And for those of you that have been teaching for a while, it's always fun to learn something new, a new tool to learn to use with students. So fantastic. All right. Thank you. I appreciate your participation. So those are just two examples of types of questions that you can use with iClicker, the platform. I wanted to show you, whoops, there we go. And here's just a short clip to give you an overview of what iClicker is.
Imagine a classroom where every student feels seen, engaged, and excited to learn. Introducing iClicker, a tool created by educators for educators to transform learning moments into meaningful connections. iClicker empowers you to go beyond traditional teaching with tools to gauge understanding instantly, spark engaging discussions, and keep students focused on what matters. Assess knowledge in real time with polls and quizzes. Use the AI-powered question creator to generate new subject-specific assessments instantly. And help students reflect on their understanding with our confidence rating feature. Unlike other tools, iClicker is crafted with expertise from educators and learning science research, boosting students' grades by up to 8 percentage points, a solution designed to engage and truly educate. Make every class a dynamic, interactive experience. Join the educators who trust iClicker to make learning impactful and accessible. Imagine a
Okay, with that in mind, I am now going to stop sharing so that Colin can take over and jump in and tell us how. How do we use iClicker, Colin?
All right. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for everybody again for joining. As we get going here, I'm going to cut my camera just so my bandwidth isn't working so great today. So I just kind of given, but I want to everybody to see me say hello. Again, like I said, thanks for joining. So before we jump into anything else, the last question that I saw go into the chat, I do want to address that. So we do have a site license in place there at UNT. So students can use this without any additional kind of subscription fee. So that is one of the great things about uh, this tool and why we're kind of really pushing to get it used on campus, because it is something that students don't have to pay any extra for. So hopefully that's kind of removes one of the barriers that you may have for getting student kind of engagement with this. My part of the presentation is not going to be as fun or interactive necessarily as Tama's there, but it is just kind of walking through really kind of how you get started for the first day of class, seeing kind of what the system looks like from your side, from the student side, in a regular poll. So the polling, just so you know, is not very different from the events that we just saw a bit ago. The difference being that with that, you will be able, or with the regular polling that you'll be able to do during class, you will have the student feedback that you'll be able to see tied to a specific student, will allow you to store their grades and things like that. So again, we'll talk about that as we kind of go through. I'm going to try to move through fairly quickly today, just because, again, we only have so much time, and I want to make sure we are covering everything you might need to get into the first day of class. As was mentioned earlier, if you have questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. We'll try to make sure to take periodic breaks there so we can answer those and make sure that everybody's comfortable. So as you may have seen from what Tama was showing, iClicker does work with any presentation software. So there's nothing that you have to embed into your presentation for iClicker to work. There's nothing that you have to put into iClicker that, as far as getting ready for the first day of class, as far as using this in class, really kind of the best practice normally is just to type up whatever question it is that you're going to be using for the class into your slide as kind of its own slide there. iClicker is going to capture an image of whatever's on your screen and use that. So you can use this whether it's with PowerPoint or Google Slides or a YouTube video, whatever it may be. You can use that as a question because it is just capturing a screenshot. You can choose whether or not that deploys out to students. So like you saw in the events where there's a screenshot available that you can see. Otherwise, you can hide that from students if you'd like to during the class. And again, we'll talk about that as we go through settings and things like that. Today, we're going to be looking at the synchronous version of iClicker, so the polling that we'll be doing. We do have quizzing features. We do have an assignments feature that you can use as well to use asynchronously. But again, today we're looking at really just the basics, so you're ready for that first day of class. We may do, I believe, an advanced training down the line where we can kind of look at some of these other things. So if you're interested in that, be on the lookout for that, as well as if you would just like to sign up for an individual time to kind of look at that, or if your department wants to look at it with me, we can set up times for those as well. So as far as student participation, so you've already seen kind of those that were able to participate, what it looks like either from your phone or from a web browser. But any student can participate from either a phone if they have the iOS or Google Play Store on there, they can download the app, or they can participate from any web browser. So phone, tablet, laptop, anything that has that web browser on there, they just go to iClicker.com and they can participate from there. We do have a geofence that you can set around your classroom that allows you to make sure that students are actually showing up to participate. We do instantly collect the feedback. So as you saw during the presentation there at the start, you can see that feedback as it comes in. In a regular class, you can also grade in real time if you'd like, so you don't have to grade when you get back to your office. You don't have to. You can certainly wait till after class to grade that. but you do get that feedback instantly. And we do work with syncing your grades with Canvas. And so the way that we have things set up right now is that you can bring your roster over from Canvas at the push of a button. Keeps things updated. You can update that as often as you'd like. It also helps with getting students enrolled in your course in iClicker, because if they already have an account, whenever you go to sync your roster, it'll place your course into their course page for them. So there's no extra setup that they need to do. There's a couple of other ways that you can get them into your course that we'll talk about when we look at settings here in a bit, but that is, the easiest way. You can also send grades over at the push of a button. So we do integrate with Canvas in a way that sends grades over, and you can decide if you want it to be multiple columns, meaning that every iClicker score goes in as its own grade into Canvas, or you can choose where it's a single column, so the scores will just continue to add up throughout the semester. Currently, we do not have the ability to sync your attendance. However, that is going to change here in the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping prior to the start of the semester. I have not heard a specific date yet, but that is coming. I will be able to talk about that a little bit towards the end, just with some slides of what I have, of what that'll look like. But just rest assured that even if that syncing isn't available at the start of the semester, the data will still be captured. So you can still go back afterwards and sync this once that integration becomes fully available. So as far as what you need as the instructor to get started, so the first thing you need to do is to have an account. You'll create that at iClicker.com, and I'll show you that here in just a second. You'll also need the iClicker software to be able to run this during class. So it should be on your classroom computers. The iClicker system should be, so you can run it from there. But if you'd like to take in your own laptop, or you want to have it on your office computer, whatever the case may be, so you can test things out, you can get that from iClicker.com as well. And then the last thing is you just want to make sure that you have the strongest internet you can connect to. Hardwired is great if you can have it. I know that's becoming less and less available on all campuses. So just know it will work on Wi-Fi as well. You just want to make sure that you are connected to the strongest Wi-Fi you can get to. As far as what students need, so again, they need to have an account as well, just like you. They will need to make sure that they have somewhere they can participate from. So again, web browser or the app. Again, to point out, there is no subscription fee for students at UNT, so that's a really great thing. Again, takes away a little bit of the pressure for them. And then they do want to make sure that they are connected to Wi-Fi as well. Being on Wi-Fi, aside from the fact that it does help kind of with stability, also helps if you are using that location feature to make sure that they're showing up in the correct place. So as I mentioned earlier, this is our website, iClicker.com. This is where you can go and create your account. This is where you can go and sign in once you've created your account. And if you need to sign it, or excuse me, to download the software, right up here where it says getting started, you can then download the instructor software. You'll see there's a Windows version and a Mac version. If you do choose the Windows version, just make sure you use the standalone version that you see right here. Creating your account, you can get this done normally in less than a minute. You just type in your university. Choose your role. And then you'll see here, it's just a little bit of information that we have you put in, just get you started pretty quickly. The remote ID that you see down here, this is for if you decide to still use those physical remotes that you may have seen in the past, you will need an iClicker instructor base. That's where you would put, there's a blue instructor remote that goes with that you can input there. Again, the physical remotes, while they are still available, isn't something that we're pushing at North Texas simply because you do have that site license. The physical remotes would be an extra fee because the students would have to purchase those. But again, those are still available if you are somebody who'd like to still use those. So once you have created that account, again, you can come right here to sign in and sign in as an instructor. A couple of things that I want to point out. First and foremost, everything that you're going to do before and after class, you want to do from this website. So whether it's creating your account, signing into your account, looking at grades, any of that kind of stuff you want to do from the website, setting up your course you want to do from the website as well. That software is really there just to be a tool to use during class to run the session. So that's the only time you really need the software is to actually run an active session. The other thing I want to point out is the same credentials that you use to sign in as an instructor, you can also use to sign in as a student. So as you're testing things out, you can sign in as a student and see what they see. I would suggest anybody, whether you're new to iClicker or you've used it before, to have a test course that you can kind of go and play around in. If you wanted to do that kind of as we're going through, so you can look at it as we walk through together, by all means, feel free. But again, there's no problem in having that instructor or that test course. You can also add your credentials in as the student, and that way you can see things from what they would see as well. We're going to choose instructor. We'll have our information here, and we'll go ahead and sign in. And when you first show up into the courses page here, yours is going to be empty. We can go ahead and create a new course right up here at the top. I'll also just show you really quickly, if you have a course that you want to archive, you can click right here on that and archive that course. I would always suggest archiving a course rather than deleting a course. Once a course is deleted, there's not really a way for us to get that back for you. So you want to make sure that even if you don't want to see it anymore, you just go ahead and archive it. That way you can still go back and view that information and move things around from there. But we'll go ahead right here and click Create New Course. And to the question earlier, you do want to use this full course option. So while this does say it's free for students, that is for universities that don't have that site license in place. So where it's a student pay model, that would be free for students to just do attendance. But using this full course option is going to still give you the option to do attendance as well as all of our other features, polling, quizzing, assignments, etc. Your institution is going to pre-populate for you. Your course discipline, you do have to choose one from this list for you to be able to create the course. You can use the other option down at the bottom if you don't see any, but it is a pretty long list. I haven't found too many people who need to use that other option. And then course name. Course name can really be whatever you'd like it to be in terms of it does not have to match word for word what is in Canvas for things to match up. So you can make it as specific as possible so students know that they're in the correct place. So again, just kind of whatever works for you on that. So we'll go ahead and put that in. Start date and end date. So the start date is just going to be normally whatever day you create that course, and the end date is going to be 6 months after. Having students get in early, normally there's no issue, and with classes starting here pretty soon, I know, there's not a ton of time necessarily in between. So again, really no issues with that. That's also where I suggest having that test course. So if you do want to test things out, students don't think that they're missing anything while they're in there. The end date's a little bit more important because on that end date, the system's going to automatically archive that course. So again, like I said earlier, you can still go back and view the information. Students that were in that course can go back and view their information as well. It just keeps students next semester from accidentally signing up for an old course. As far as student enrollment, like I mentioned earlier, that roster grade sync is a great way to get students in. If they have that account, they don't need to do anything. As soon as you sync that roster, their name will show up in your page and your course will show up in their page. But we do have a couple of different other options to get them in. So let's say they show up on the first day of class, they didn't pay attention to whatever messaging you may have sent out about iClicker. So one way that they can get in is to go and manually search for your course. So they can search by either your name or your course name and add it that way. Or you can provide them with a URL. So just like the QR code and the URL that you saw earlier, those are options that you can use in a regular course also. With those, you do have the option to limit your course to where they must be invited, meaning either through the roster grade sync or one of those two join codes, the QR code or the URL. And again, that just keeps students who don't belong in that course from joining by manually searching it. In terms of course ID and term, both optional. Those are really there kind of for records and making sure that students know that they're in the correct course. Meeting times are optional as well. And again, aside from showing that students, if it's a Tuesday 8 a.m. versus a Tuesday 10 a.m. class, knowing if they're in the right place, we do have an auto run attendance feature that I'll talk about a little bit more here in just a bit. If you wanted to use that auto run attendance feature, you would need to set your meeting times here. Just know that that auto run attendance feature is really more for courses that are only going to be doing attendance, meaning if you're going to be doing any kind of polling, quizzing, assignments, that kind of thing, I would suggest not using that auto run because every time you start a poll, the system's automatically going to take an attendance session for you. But once we have all that filled out, we'll go ahead and click create. And we'll see the course show up in our course page here. When we click on that course, if we go over here on this left-hand side to settings, any of that information that we need to edit for whatever reason, so if we need to change the end date or the start date, if we need to update our course ID, any of that we need to do, this is where we can do that. This is where you can get that copy of the URL, or you can send out the QR code so you can copy the image and paste it into your first day class slides. So you have those available. I'll also show you once we get into the software itself where you can open that up in a live session. So you do have some options on where you can get that. but here's where you can go download that ahead of time. Devices. So devices, as I mentioned earlier, we do still allow for the physical remotes to be used. If you don't have an iClicker base, the physical remotes won't work. So by leaving that first option on, it is kind of a moot point unless you have one of those physical bases, but you can go ahead and change it to where it is mobile devices only. And down here, you'll see where we have a focus mode. So that focus mode is not going to tell you what a student was doing when they left the app, but it is going to tell you if they actively left the app, meaning they, closed the app on their phone, they swiped it closed, or if they're on their computer, they left the tab that has iClicker open to go do something else. It's just going to give you a report at the end of class. It'll tell you, John Smith was in focus for 48 minutes, out of focus for 2 minutes, and left the app 3 times. The only kind of caution that I give with using that, because it is a good feature, especially if you are concerned with students, doing other things on their smart devices, is that if a student, for instance, is on their laptop to participate and they're also taking notes on that laptop, every time they go leave iClicker to take the notes, it's going to show them as out of focus. So you just kind of have to be aware of how your students are participating in class before you kind of make that decision. So attendance data is, like I said, it's going to be taken every time you run a class session. This data, as I mentioned earlier, currently, like if you went to go right now to go look at this, is not going to sync over to Canvas just yet. That will be out here soon. But you can highlight students once they've gone over a certain number of unexcused absences. This is where that auto run is if you would like to use that. So again, if all you're doing is attendance, you can set it to run for the first 10 minutes of class, the whole class, the last 5 minutes, whatever works best for you. And this is where you would set your location for that geofence that I mentioned earlier. So let me scroll down here. So as you see, we use just Google Maps to do this. You can search for a location up here at the top. So if you're setting this up from home and you want to go ahead and get everything ready for your first day of class, you can search for the location here. I will tell you that for whatever reason, Google doesn't seem to do a very good job of finding building names, at least in this tool. So the actual street address is what you would need to search here. But if you are in your classroom or you're at least in the building where your classroom takes place, you can go ahead and click the Find My Location button here. It'll find that for you. But as we zoom in, we can see we have this little radius that we can set around our classroom. We can set this as low as 100 feet or all the way up to 500 feet. I normally suggest setting the minimum at 150 feet just because that does give a little bit of wiggle room there to your students. That is where I always like to point out to instructors the 2 biggest issues that we run into with students are with the location services here, and they're usually fairly easy to fix. So one of them is that students do need to allow for location services to work, and they need to make sure that they're using precise location, not approximate location. If they use approximate location, it's purposely going to obscure where they're at, and so they won't be able to check in that way. The other thing that we do suggest is to recalibrate the GPS on their devices because they may be standing in front of you saying, hey, I'm right here, but it's not letting me check in. What's going on? All they have to do that is put their phone into airplane mode for a few seconds and then take it back out of airplane mode. That recalibrates their GPS and helps everything from iClicker to Uber to Waze, anything that uses location on their phone. It's just kind of best practices to do that with our devices fairly often anyway. So again, fairly easy to fix those things, but those are what we run into, and I just like to point that out in case you do run into it. So with polling, just so you're aware, well, before I do that, attendance, just so I do want to make sure I tell this real quick. With attendance data, just know that we don't store that data. So we don't keep that. We don't know where they were at. All we see is, were you in that radius, yes or no? So as far as privacy is concerned, they don't need to be concerned with, iClicker tracking them. We don't do that. I also say that to say that once a student comes into class and they check in, we only check it that one time. So like if they check in and they try to leave class, technically they can still participate. And I tell you that because I have kind of a workaround for that, or at least kind of a way to mitigate that to a degree when we look at the polling. So I do want to point that out here. So with polling, like I said, iClicker is going to capture that image just like you saw during the events that we ran earlier. You can choose what screen you want iClicker to capture. And so that first option there does give the best flexibility. That is the one that I suggest to everybody to use. And what that is the very first question of each day. The system is going to ask you what screen you want to capture. So it only asks for that first question, but it is going to ask every day. With that, again, you can, if you have dual monitors, you're presenting on one screen, you're hosting from another one, you can go ahead and move that toolbar off to the screen that the students cannot see, but it'll continue to capture the image on that screen that you're presenting to them. That second option that you see right there makes you move the toolbar back and forth so you kind of put it on whatever screen you want. Again, I don't like that option because if you do use that, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people forget to move that toolbar back over so you capture an image that you don't really want to capture. So again, leaving that first option does tend to work best. Image preview, it is going to give you a thumbnail of every question every time you start it to make sure that you're still capturing the screen that you want. You can turn that off if it gets annoying, but I do often suggest using that as well. So to the point of students trying to participate from elsewhere after checking in. So again, by default, it is going to send that screenshot out whenever you start a question. But what you can do is you can set this middle option here, meaning that during the live question, the image is going to be hidden from the student. They still have the option to answer the question. They just won't see the actual question on their screen. So they do have to be in class to be able to see what you're presenting, to see what the question is. But leaving that middle option on is great because they do get the question after it's closed. And we do have a feature inside of the student app that allows them to create their own study guides based on the questions that you've presented to them. So they do get those questions later. They can create those study guides. So it's kind of a nice little feature there. The other reason I've seen people use that, aside from just, again, making sure students are in the right place, is that it does take a little less bandwidth to go out with the question if you are not sending an image with it. And this last option here is that you can turn off screenshots entirely, meaning that students will never get those images. You can choose later to send those out if you'd like. There's just kind of more steps to that. But again, that's just to hide it, so they do have to be there in class to see all of your questions. By default, the system's going to send out a results page basically to students whenever a question closes. It's not going to tell them how any individual student responded aside from them, but it will tell them, 80% of the class chose A, 20% chose B, etc. So you do have that, so students can see that on their side as well. That way they kind of know how they're stacking up with the rest of the class. And then polling. So this is, or scoring points. This is how they decide, how this affects their grade inside of iClicker. So we have participation points and we have performance points. So participation is all or nothing. As you see right there, there's a threshold that they need to respond to, at least 75%. You can adjust that value however much you'd like here, and you can adjust the point value as well. So as long as they answer that 75%, they get that 1 point for the day. There's no partial credit. If you don't want to use participation or any of these that you don't want to use, if you just set the value to be worth 0, it is basically turning that off. Students can also get points for performance. So as you see right here, they get 1 point for a correct response. We can adjust that value. We can also give points for just responding, meaning if they answer the question right or wrong, they get a point here. If they get it correct, they get that additional point. And again, we can set either of those values to be worth 0. This is going to sound obvious as I start with it, but I'm going to make a point with it, I promise. So if you ask one question for the day and the student gets it right, they can get up to 2 points. If you ask 10 questions and the student gets them all right, they could get up to 20 points. The point I'm making with that is every day could be worth a different value. So just kind of be aware of that if you want to use this option, that you either want to make sure that you have the same number of questions every day, or that you and the students are just aware that one day missing 10 questions may not be as appealing as missing the day with one question, right? So just kind of know that. But for that reason, we do have this second option where you can score a total polling session, meaning we cap out the points at a certain number. You can set that value to whatever you'd like. So in this current situation, if a student, if you ask one question, the student gets it right, they get 5. If you ask 10 questions and they get 9 right, they get 4.5. So it does set the upper limit, and then it's just a percentage based off of that for the rest of that. You can't give points for just responding with this. It is just points for correct response, but that will cap that value. Also be aware that performance points and participation points do get added together as part of the total grade for the class. So if you wanted it to be actually capped at 5, just know that you'd want to set this value to be worth 0, or set this to 1 and this to be worth 4. Okay. Are there questions so far on the settings that we've looked at? We're going to look at integrations next. I'll talk briefly about the quizzing, but are there questions on the integrations? Or excuse me, on what we've seen so far? All right. So as I mentioned earlier, today we're going to be looking at kind of just the basic iClicker stuff. So quizzing is
Right.
not something that we're going to look at a whole
Question.
lot today. Uh-huh. Your
So I
question?
had a quick question. So
Yep.
so once those points, do those get automatically populated into Canvas then? Is that what is that
So they
you're setting these settings up for the iClicker, and so then once does that get translated into Canvas automatically then, if you set up the assignment that way in Canvas?
So good question. So it does not get sent automatically in terms of like it doesn't happen in the background. There is a button that you'll push to sync your grades. When you sync those are the points that will go over into Canvas. So it's not happening in the background, but it is automatic in terms of it is at the push of a button.
Okay, and you're gonna show us how to do that?
Yep, I am.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
I have one question too.
Mhm.
Sorry, I don't know why my camera's not working. Sorry.
Good.
On the sharing, if you select the option of automatically when the poll ends, what do the students see? Just choices?
No, so oh well, yeah. So while the question's live, they'll just see the answer options. So if it's multiple choice, they'll just see A through E on their screen. Where
Okay.
the screenshot would be, it would just say your instructor is not sharing screenshots at this time. But as soon as the question ends, they would see that image pop up. So they would have that available to them as soon as the question's
Oh,
over with.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Hmm. Okay. Um, okay, so like I said, quizzing is going to be one of our more advanced features. Quizzing, basically, the difference between quizzing and polling is that polling is where you can start and stop every question every day. Quizzing is where you would send out a certain number of questions all at once. So we do have a pre-authored quizzing now, but we also have kind of on the fly. But in either scenario, you're basically giving them, let's say, 5 questions at once. They answer at their own pace. They submit when they're done. So it does work like a normal quiz in terms of, they're on their own. They submit it when they're done. They can walk away at that point or, wait for the next thing that we're doing in class. But again, it is kind of self-paced. It's on their own. So integrations, this is how we're going to connect to Canvas. So as you see right up here at the top, there's a button.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Mhm.
For the students who have accommodations for this quiz feature, they need some more time. So can we adjust time for those students?
So we don't have a way in quizzing to adjust time. It would just be kind of leaving that open to them. We do have an assignments feature that is asynchronous that can kind of work a little bit as a workaround to that. But I would say just as far as in class for extra time, we don't have that feature to allow for extra time for individual students.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. Okay, so here in the integrations tab, we have this connect to Canvas button. So we'll click on that and we can say go to Canvas. You'll just sign in with your normal credentials, click authorize, and it'll bring us back to iClicker. So to that point, you don't need to go in and create any columns in Canvas. iClicker will do that for you when you send your scores. There is kind of one little caveat to this when I say it, but otherwise there's really no setup inside of Canvas. That's all you have to do is really sign in and authorize because iClicker is going to create those columns for you. But when we get to this page, we'll see a list of all of our courses. If you've been in Canvas for a while, you may see a long list, so you can search by course code or course name. If you haven't published your course in Canvas yet, you can also find that here. So we'll find the course that we want to connect to and click Next. And here it's going to show your sections. So if all of your, if you have a situation where you have multiple sections inside of Canvas, one Canvas course, you can connect all of those at the same time. However, if you have a situation where your courses, the sections meet at different times, so section A meets at 9, section B meets at 10, you would need to have an iClicker course for each one of those sections. And then when you get to this portion of the setup, you just connect the section that meets at that time. We'll go ahead and connect that and click connect. At this point, I would normally say for most people, you can go ahead and sync roster now. I'm going to wait because I'm going to show you what you're likely going to see on the first day of class or the first time you sync this. But again, for you, I would go ahead and say sync your roster now. But the last little piece here is deciding how you want these grades to go over into Canvas. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, you can do either one single column or multiple separate columns in Canvas. So the one single column is just going to keep adding points as the semester goes along. So one column, it's easy enough. The individual activity scores, where it sends iClicker scores over as their own grade every session. This is that caveat that I was mentioning. If you decide to use that option, I would suggest creating a grade group that you set at the very first kind of assignment group there in Canvas, because iClicker is going to drop those columns into that first, the top listed grade group. The reason why I would say the majority of people who choose that option do so is because iClicker does not have a way to drop lowest scores or excuse scores. iClicker, the only way to kind of do that is to add the points for that student if they miss. So doing some kind of a makeup assignment, or you might tell them, I'll give you 2 where you get the points for the day, whatever works for you on that. Canvas, however, does have the ability to drop that or excuse grades. So that's where, if you want to have that ability, that's where you would want to create that grade group and have those separate columns. And then lastly, this is a relatively new kind of feature here, so you can decide how you want these points to go over. So you can either send a total points column, meaning participation and performance get added together. You can send just performance, just participation, or you can send each over as its own individual column. So you can have a performance column and a participation column go over into Canvas.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
This is Nirmala from Math. So when I clicked on the sync roster, it did sync everything, but it shows that certain students are they're pending in status. Why
Yep, so
does
that's what I was about to show right here. So here, once you've synced your, once you've gotten everything saved and you go over into your people tab, this
Mhm.
is where you can see you can sync your roster. So you can do it as many times as you'd like. There's no harm in syncing your roster. And this is why I waited to sync mine, because I wanted to come into a course where I had other participants that I could show this with. So this is the messaging kind of that you're seeing here. So you can see a certain number of students are good to go. A certain number of students need to update their iClicker profile in this case, but normally early in the semester, these are just going to be students who we haven't found an iClicker profile for them yet. So they need to go in and create their iClicker account. But if you view right here where it says view details, we can see who those students are, and we can
Mhm.
actually send them an email from iClicker telling them what they need to do to either create their account, or if they have a separate issue, it'll kind of tell them how to fix their issue. But that way you're not having to send things out to any individual student. iClicker will handle that for you. So we can send that out. It'll tell you the last time you sent the email. So like if you do this once a week, you can see, this student should know already that, how to do this, but we can see the list of them here. And until they get into, until we find an iClicker profile for them, that's why it's going to say pending.
Perfect, thank you.
Mhm.
My second question is about grade syncing. What if I want all my grades to just remain on iClicker towards the end of the semester? I want to transfer just one single grade.
Mhm.
Is it possible?
Yes. So you don't need to sync grades more than you're ready to do so, because students can keep track of their own grades in iClicker throughout the semester. I would suggest giving yourself a little bit of time on that. So I wouldn't maybe wait until like students are done with class to do that, because if there is a student who needs to go in and edit like their profile for whatever reason, they put in the wrong ID or something like that, you want to have some time for them to be able to go back and fix that, before they've left for the, for the winter break or whatever it may be. So I would give yourself a little bit of time on that, but that's where syncing your roster throughout the semester does help, because you can still see those students who are having issues, who were not going to be able to connect to Canvas, because even if they have an account, but their information doesn't match up, they will also show up as an issue whenever you sync that roster.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Valerie, you had a question?
Yes. Thanks for paying attention to me since I don't
Mm-hmm.
have a picture up there.
Yeah, you're good.
My question was, I plan to ask questions that may not have a correct answer because I
Mm-hmm.
just want them to think about it and then we'll talk about, what the majority of the students feel. But then I will have ones that there is a correct answer. How will I would want to score the one where there isn't a correct answer, just a 1 for participation. But how can I change the ones where they have accurate answers? How can I make them more points? Does that make sense, what I just
Yeah.
said? I hope.
Yeah. Yep. So if you don't grade a question, it
Mm-hmm.
it won't add or subtract points, for getting it right or wrong. As long as you like, if you have it as 1 point for responding and 1 point for correct answer, that 1 point for responding will be given for every question. And then if you don't grade it, no extra points are added. It doesn't show that a student is, missing anything. Only if you grade it does it add points for correct responses.
Okay, I must have missed something then about how you set when a certain question is graded versus one that is not.
Yeah, so I'll show that here in just a second once we get
Okay.
into running the actual poll.
Sure.
You'll see how you grade that, but
Okay,
so that hopefully will make a little bit more sense then.
yeah.
And so iClicker is already integrated into Canvas for points. It's not yet for attendance. And like I said, that's where I don't have a definitive date on that yet, but it should be. Again, I was told prior to the start of the semester. I don't know kind of where we're at quite on that, but the ability to send points is already there. And that's just going to be whenever you're ready to sync your grades. And again, I'll talk about that kind of as we go through that little portion. And I know we're already kind of getting towards the end of time, so I'm going to go fairly quickly here when we look at the polling. So, and I'm happy to stick around for a little bit afterwards for questions. So I just kind of know that I am going to kind of go through quickly on that. But the last thing I do want to point out really quickly here is under this People tab, this is again where you sync your roster. If you have any TAs or co-instructors, you're just going to go right here to where it says instructors up at the top. You can add that TA or that co-instructor. Just be aware they do need to go ahead and create their account before you add them. Once you do, you can add them here with their email they used to create their account, first name, last name, and then choose instructor or TA. And the only difference between those two is that an instructor's name will show up next to yours, a TA will not. But otherwise, they can do all the same things you can do. They can go in and sync grades, they can edit scores, or they can run the entire session if you'd like them to. But again, that way you're not sharing your credentials with them to sign in. Okay, so looking at the software. So what you're going to do when you get to class is look for this little icon. If you can see it on my screen on your computer, it's just a white circle with a blue kind of cloud inside of it. You'll sign in just like you do on the website. You can see a list of all of your courses. If it is, especially early in the semester and you want to have it up and ready for your students, you can go right here to where it says join code. It's just going to open up into a web browser, so you can see that here. You can have that up as students are walking in or kind of whenever you're ready for that. But once you're ready to go ahead and start a class, you can go right here, just find the course you're going to use. I'm going to use this one right here and click Start Class. And you're going to see this toolbar that pops up here in this kind of right-hand corner. You can move this toolbar around as much as you'd like, move it wherever you'd like. It'll stick wherever you leave it. It's going to stay there no matter where else I click on my screen. So as you see, I can click around. That toolbar is going to stay right there. I'm going to go ahead and sign in as a student so you can see their view. So all they will do is they will come in here and find your course. So once they've added your course, you don't need to keep using that QR code. It is just to get them into the class. Otherwise, your course is going to stay in their courses page. So they'll find that course that day. They'll go over here and they wait for a button that pops up and says join, and they'll click that. As I mentioned just a little bit ago, students can keep track of their own score and their own attendance. So even if you're not syncing throughout the course of the semester, they can keep track of their own information here. But they're going to go ahead and click this join button. So I normally suggest that as students are coming in for the day, you go ahead and launch that session. That way, if they do run into issues with the GPS or whatever the case may be, they can go ahead and do the airplane mode thing or check their settings, whatever it is. But prior to questions getting started, so that way they're not panicking whenever a question actually does get asked. Just so you can see right here on the toolbar, I can minimize this down just by clicking this little blue icon. I can move it over to the side so it takes up a little less real estate on the screen. And then I can move it here. Again, I can move this over to my second screen as well if I'd like. But again, that's kind of your preference on that. But I get to my first question here that I want to ask. Again, there's nothing special about this. It's just a typed up slide that's in my presentation. So I'm going to look right here where it says poll. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I can see the drop down menu of all of my question types. If I look right over here on this right hand side, you'll see a button that says more. Over here, there's a button that says confidence that we can turn on. It doesn't turn on or off automatically, so you do need to set that as on if you'd like to use that feature. And what we'll do right here is we'll go ahead and click on the start button. Again, because this is the first question of the day, it's going to ask me what screen I want to share. I do suggest usually using the whole screen if you can, but we're going to use this one right here. We'll go ahead and click select. And as you can see, we can see how many responses are coming in. We can see how much time has gone past. By default, it does set to count up from 0, so you start and stop each question. You can set it to count down from a certain set of time there, and it'll stop the question on its own once you reach that time limit. The only thing I caution on is that a question can't be reopened once it has ended, so letting it count up does give you a little bit more flexibility. If you let it count down, there is a way to extend time, but if you're scrambling trying to extend time, you may miss it. So again, I normally suggest letting it count up. But as a student, if I'm allowing for those screenshots, this is what it's going to look like. If I had it to where the students weren't seeing it in a live question, like I said up here, it would just say your instructor is not sharing images at this time. But all they do is they click the answer that they want to use. They just want to make sure they get this answer received, a notification. For multiple choice, all they need to do is select the correct answer. For all the other question types, there is going to be a button that says send answer. If you have confidence turned on, they are asked at the bottom, how confident are you in your answer? So they can go through and answer that. And then when we stop this question, we can see the results button right here, as you saw with when Tama was showing this earlier. But we can see the responses if we want to grade. So to the point earlier about grading and choosing if the students get points or not. If I don't choose any correct answers from here, the students can't get points for correct response, meaning they also can't lose points for getting it incorrect. But if I do want to grade, I can just click on whatever answers are correct, and I can make as many of these be correct as I'd like. You don't have to grade this during class. There's a way after class to do this as well. But just be aware you can do it during class, so that way you're not having to go back afterwards. And down here at the bottom, you'll see this is where it says details. If we open this up a little bit more, we can see all the responses that came in for the confidence. So again, it's just a nice way to kind of get that extra information of, okay, how many people got it right, but also how many people were very confident in that response. So we can go back to questions to bring it back to this main kind of toolbar here, and go ahead and click results to minimize that back down. Valerie, you had a question?
Sorry, no, I forgot to lower my hand from the last one.
You're good. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, confidence does not turn on or off automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it off just to kind of speed things up a bit here. You can see we have multiple answer questions. These are going to be very similar to the short answer. The difference being that students can select more than one answer to be correct. They hit that send answer button. I'll stop my question, look at results. And with multiple answer, the student does need to match exactly what I have to get their points, meaning that if the answer is A, B, and C, they must have A, B, and C to get it correct. If they get it partially correct, there is no partial points. So they do need to match exactly what I put in as the correct answer. Short answer questions are going to be our probably second most popular questions that we have behind multiple choice. And this does give you probably the most flexibility of any of the question types that we have. Students have 140 characters to use. They can type this in. They can use numeric characters as well if they'd like. We'll go ahead and type that in. We'll hit send answer. When I look at the results, so every possible result gets listed out here. So, if we'll say the correct answer was something simple like the word green, if the student, if 100 students are in the class, hopefully a lot of them get that correct. So it's not going to list green, 75 times, but it'll put a 75 next to it to let us know how many people chose that response. I can select as many of these to be correct as I'd like as well. I can also add my own answer in here. So with this, I can say, with this little star next to it, okay, yeah, you're going to get credit, but this would have been the best answer you could have given. Also, kind of like my answer there indicates, we do have a word cloud feature. This is a really popular feature with those that use short answer questions, especially the open-ended ones. We can bring this up in class and show this to students, have the discussion about it from here. It is a true word cloud, meaning that anything that gets used more frequently is going to be larger. I also always like to mention that we do filter out inappropriate language in the word cloud. Knock on wood, that hasn't ever been an issue, but just know that it does filter that out. Numeric questions, again, I know I'm going quickly. I know we're recording this, but if there are questions at the end, please feel free. I just want to make sure we get through as much as we can. So anyway, numeric questions, very similar in terms that they can type in, but it must be one of these characters that you see at the bottom, and they have 8 characters instead of the 140. So that's where short answer does give you a little bit more flexibility in terms of they have, even if it's numeric characters, they can still use those. Again, I can make as many correct as I'd like.
Excuse me, for this numeric, you have a scale from 1 to 10, but the student can put any number. Am I right?
Correct. Yep. It's open in terms of they can put in, it has to be one of those numeric characters, but they're not limited to, to spaces there. They can type out as long as they, within that 8 characters. Because again, iClicker, we don't know what the question is. We just know that the question is open. So they have the same options to answer with every time. So like multiple choice, it's always going to be A through E, even if you're using it like true, false, A, B. A through E is always going to be the option for multiple choice. So next we have our formula and symbol questions, also a text box. Also we have equation symbols, Greek letters. They can go to different powers there. So again, students can kind of use this, as needed. If there was a confidence question with this, my answer would be not confident, but I'm just putting in some numbers there. So we're going to go ahead and stop this and look at results. And with this, you can make as many answers correct as you'd like as well. We just don't have the ability to add our own correct answer to this. And then I won't spend too much time on this because I know we also already looked at the target questions during the events. But in case anybody missed it, just so you know, this is what it looks like. Even if you have screenshots turned off during live questions, they will get that image during this question because they'll have to be able to answer. They just drop a pin wherever they want the correct answer to be. And looking at results to grade this, if there is a correct answer, we can open this up. You can click and drag, and anything inside of that box is going to be counted as correct. So it is just a box for now. I'm hoping someday they make it to where it's more, where they can, draw and make it a little bit more specific. But for now, it is that box. So that's the question types that we have. But also for all of the question types, you can also use our anonymous polling. So I'm going to use this with multiple choice, but again, it works with all of them. Back over here under more, just like where we found confidence, we'll find anonymous. We'll turn that on. We'll start the question. As a student, they'll see that it is an anonymous question, and they can go answer it however they'd like. Instead of staying highlighted like it normally does, their answer is received, and then it kind of goes away, so the student next to them can't look over and see what they chose. And then when we stop this question and we look at results, none of these can be selected as correct. So they can't get it right or wrong. It is just there as a anonymous question. Even on our end, we don't store what they chose. Just did they respond yes or no? So they can get points still for points for responding. It still can affect their participation score, but they can't miss out on anything from that. We can turn anonymous back off where we turned it on, and that is our question types. So that is kind of the general use there. A couple other things that I do want to point out really quickly. If you look right here on this back arrow, it brings us back to this main screen. If you look here on tools, we now have a timer that you can use that is independent of questions. So if you just want to say, hey, you've got 2 minutes to have a discussion with the person next to you, you can set this. It'll run just as a timer tool for you. It does have an alarm. So if you have sound on, they'll hear it when it goes off. So it's just kind of a nice extra feature there. And also under tools, we'll see we have our reactions feature. So this is new as well. If you have this turned on, you'll see this little green smiley face down here. As a student, they'll get this on the bottom of their screen. It does not work during questions, but in between questions. And so you can tell the students like, hey, how are we feeling about this? Good, bad, do I need to slow down? They can put these. So you'll see these pop up on your screen. So in between questions, you're not necessarily needing to ask the question, you're just kind of wanting a heat check. It's not a right or wrong question. You just want some feedback on that. That's a nice way to get that information as well. When you're done with class, you're ready to walk away. Again, if we're in a poll when we want to do this, we get back to this back arrow. We click on end. You do want to make sure you end every session, so don't just log out of your computer and walk away. You do want to end the session because until that session is ended, you won't see the grades show up in your grade book. So when you get back to your office, you can end that session if you leave it open, or we do have a mechanism in place to end sessions overnight. But if you know you ran a session and you're not seeing the points right afterwards, just know that it's likely because the session is still open. So you can end class normally, or you can end with an exit poll. If we end with an exit poll, students are going to get a notification. It says your instructor wants feedback. These questions are locked in, but you do have, on a scale of 1 to 5, rate your understanding, and then they have 1,000 characters that they can leave you a note. This comes in as a CSV file with their name, email, and ID, so you can see that submission. It isn't anonymous, so you can hopefully reach out to them prior to the next class if you'd like. And that is running a session. So real quick before and again, I know we're already kind of running a little bit over, so I appreciate everybody's patience, but I will stick around afterwards when we're done. But there's a couple more things. But are there questions specific to kind of running a poll, ending a poll, any of that? Okay.
If you run an exit poll, is it a required response or can they opt not to answer?
No, it's not a required response.
Okay.
Okay. So once you're done with class, you get back to your office. Again, you just go to iClicker.com, sign into your profile there. And then when you open up your course, you'll see everything that we've done for the day. So we can see that exit poll, how many people responded, the class poll, the attendance. To the question of like if there's stuff that we don't actually want graded, to that point, we can just go through and make it to where there is no correct response. And now the student would get the point for responding if I'm giving that, but they're not going to lose points for getting it right or wrong. So we can grade after class, like I mentioned. You don't have to do it during class. The anonymous question is still anonymous. If we look here under gradebook, this is again where we can see the total performance and participation. If we look under details, we can see session by session how the student has done. If a student does some kind of makeup assignment for us and we want to add points, we can do that right here just by clicking on the assignment for that student. We can adjust their points here. It keeps track of how we adjusted those points for them, so we can see it. Any editing of the scores that you want to do, you want to make sure that you do that inside of iClicker before you sync to Canvas. You don't want to edit the score in Canvas and then sync, because if you do, it'll overwrite whatever you put in Canvas. So you want to make sure that you edit that here. We'll click Save. It gives us this little gray triangle to let us know that we did edit the scores for that student. And as far as syncing your grades, this is where you're going to do that as well. So if you look right here, there's a Sync Grades button. If you are going to sync a single column that has the total, you can just select all, and you'll do that every time throughout the semester. Even if you're doing it after every class, you just want to select all for single column. If you're doing multiple columns, you only need to select the new sessions, and you'll see over here in this column the last time you synced a session. So if you've already synced that one before, unless you edited a score for a student, you don't need to sync it again. Also here in this details view, if you look right here where it says poll, this is where you're going to download that CSV from with the exit poll. I don't know why it's here, but this is where it is. So this is where you'll go and find that. So we'll go ahead and close that back. And then lastly here under attendance, this is where you can go in and see the attendance data. Again, this is going to look a little bit different here coming soon. But for now, you can go in and you can see that this student, they were absent. So but they came in with some kind of note, so we can make them excused. We can leave a note for ourselves as to why they were excused, and we can save that. So it puts that little gray triangle there as well to let us know that we changed it for that student. Okay, so that's a lot of information. I know, like I said, it really does not take as long to go through this when somebody's not kind of explaining it point by point. You can usually get these things set up in less than 5 minutes and be ready to go for that first day of class. Before anything else, and again, I will stick around for questions here in just a second, but I know people are definitely probably needing to jump off. So what I do want to show is really quickly, you as instructors do have me to come to for any questions that you may have. For students, we do want to send them to iClicker.com/support. That team is great at helping students with their issues. They can help instructors as well, but you have me and my colleagues to come to as well. But we also do have our knowledge base here that is phenomenal, has all kinds of articles with pictures, click-throughs, videos, whatever you may need. And so you have that option there to go to for any kind of quick questions you may have. So anybody who needs to jump, I totally understand. Again, thank you for your patience sticking with us. I know we went a little bit over, but if anybody does have questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer anything you may have.
Colin, do you mind putting up your contact information one more time?
Yep.
Great, thanks. And yeah, feel free to stay on if you'd like to ask Colin any other questions. Thank you again so much for coming this afternoon. We know that your time is very valuable, so we appreciate it. We've got lots more plans, so stay tuned. I don't have the link here. Let me see. Yes, okay. There's the link to our fall events if you would like to see our other workshops coming up. And thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Maybe I missed the point where we invite the students or they are going to join our class. So if we prefer to put them all from our roster, and if they don't have an iClicker profile, will it be a problem?
So it will not be a problem in terms of like it won't stop anything from working for you. They will need to create that to be able to participate at some point, like whenever, whenever they get one. So they will need one. Um, the other two ways that we talked about were either you can share out that URL or QR code is one way to get them in. The other way is to allow them to manually search and add your course. So those are other ways they can get on that first day of class, but that syncing of the roster is just the easiest way because again, that stops them from having to go and search for your course or using a QR code or anything. And you can sync your roster as often as you'd like. And so I know you asked about like waiting to sync your grades until the end, which you can do. But what I would suggest is still going ahead and connecting that integration early on, so that way you can come in and here in the People tab and sync your roster as often as you'd like. So that way, as they do start, adding or they do start creating their accounts, when you sync your roster, that'll bring them in.
Okay, thanks.
Colin, can I ask, do you have any recommendations as to what kind of instructions about iClicker we should put in our syllabus? I've got just the basic that they need to set up an iClicker account as soon as possible by going to iClicker.com, but that's all I have thus far.
Right. Yeah, let me. So here in the chat, let me make sure I'm looking at the right thing here. So we do have some syllabus language. That's what I'm trying to make sure we have.
Wonderful.
Here, sorry, 1 second, let me find that. Okay. So in the chat, I am putting a link to one of our knowledge base articles. So this one has a syllabus template as well as some first day of class slides if you'd like to use those. So it has some good resources there that may be helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Great question.
Yeah.
Hey, any other questions?
Well, if nobody has another question, I created my new courses for the semester. And of course, that new web sharing thing popped up. And can you just explain why I might use it instead of the way iClicker is, just as you've shown us?
The new web polling feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons why that's helpful to certain people versus others. So for one, we don't have a Linux version of iClicker to be able to download. And so for people
Okay.
who are on Linux computers, that's one way or one reason why we would have that. The other reason is if you get to a computer in the classroom, let's just say that you can't download because you don't have, you know, or you don't have the administrative privileges to put it onto the computer, you can run from the web rather than having to have the software. So it's kind of just like an extra way to get that done. What I will tell you is the difference between that and like the regular software is that you are only able to run multiple choice questions with that. So you can't use like the short answer or any of the other kind of question types that we have. And it only works for mobile devices. So like people who are still using physical remotes in the classroom wouldn't be able to use that option either. So it's a lot more limited, especially for now. It is going to be something that they expand over time, but they did get it out kind of as quickly as they could because we do have, again, a number of users who can't get it on their computer in their classroom for whatever reason, or again, maybe they have a Linux computer. So it's just kind of a light version, I would say, of iClicker for those people.
Special applications, yeah. So I don't need to worry about it then. Great.
Right.
I like
Yeah.
that answer.
Yeah. Yep.
Exactly.
And thank you. I learned a couple other things that I've been wondering about.
Good.
I'm very excited to try those out. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining.
Yay. Wonderful. Well, Colin, thank you so much for your time.
Yep,
This was
absolutely.
wonderful and very informative. So we
Good.
appreciate it. Yes, we'll chat about maybe the advanced course later this semester.
Yeah.
So
Sounds good. All right.
great. Okay.
Thank you,
Well, we will
everybody.
see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
All right. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks, team.
Good job, Tama.
Well,
Well
thank you.
done.
It's funny.
It
Aubrey,
went well. A lot
I-
of information. I'm sure a lot of people had questions.
a lot of good questions. Yeah, I
Mhm.
told Aubrey I was out of it's been a long time since I've done a workshop at home, so I'm out of my element. And I realized right when I started, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of out of my element. But anyway, so it's good. It's good. And what a good turnout.
Yeah.
Mm,
So far, 38 people attended.
That is
nice.
great.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. That is good. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate your support.
You bet.
I'll see you in the office tomorrow.
See
Tomorrow.
you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.